الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for everyone for turning up. Thank you Ibrahim and the team for putting me in this position. So alhamdulillah, so the point of today is for us to try and see if we can do something about a mother tongue. So it's Mother Language Week, it was this week, and it still is. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that our youth, that's you guys, alhamdulillah, are in a position where they can learn their language, okay? And they can be proud of their language, because as far as I can think of, your language is your identity. You are the language that you speak. And I for one, can say that my own kids, they don't speak Somali properly, but we are trying. And so this is one of the things we're trying to do. Okay, so without further ado, I'll probably pass on to the first person. That's Ustad Rumi. Yeah. Start Rumi to introduce again.
Welcome for everyone. Inshallah ta'ala. Welcome for everyone. I would like to thank you for joining this special event. And the aim of this event is to celebrate the International Day of Mother Language. You are welcome. And I hope that you will enjoy, and I hope that this event will be beneficial for you. Welcome. Assalamu alaikum.
So next we will have Ibrahim. Ibrahim is a young person I'm very, very proud of. He's a self-taught Somali poet, none other, and he will be talking about Somali empires and Ibn Battuta in Somalia.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I basically prepared a presentation on medieval Somalia. The first part of this presentation was mainly the work of Isman, who wasn't able to come. So what I've done is I've taken his part, which looks at Ibn Battuta's travels in the Horn of Africa, and then I've added to mine, which was on some of the medieval empires in Somalia, and I made it into a bigger presentation just looking at the Horn of Africa in the medieval times. So the reason why I wanted to, the reason why I was very interested in empires in the Horn is because a lot of the time the image we have of Somalia is a place that was full of nomads. Now nomads are very important, they have a large effect on society, on culture, on politics. The Mongolian Empire was started by nomads. However, in Somalia, it wasn't just nomadic peoples, there were other forms, there were other polities, there were other ways of living. So that is why one of the things that we're looking at is Ibn Battuta and his travels. Ibn Battuta was a Maghrebi scholar and explorer from what is today Morocco, and he traveled very extensively. He traveled all over Africa, he traveled all over Europe, he traveled all over the Middle East, especially all over Asia, and especially going to like Muslim lands. And he traveled more than any other explorer in pre-modern history. So this is before aeroplanes, before cars. He had ships and camel caravans, and he was able to travel this great distance. So he traveled over a period of 30 years, and when he was nearing to the year that he died, when he was nearing to 1369, he recounted all of his travels to a good friend of his, a scholar called Ibn Juzay. And Ibn Juzay wrote it all down and made it into a book called the Rihla, basically, or the Travels, Rihla, the Travels. And the reason why Ibn Battuta is such an important source is not only because of the length of his travels, but also because he went to a lot of places that today we don't have records of. So in Somalia, where normally traditionally an oral society, So there isn't a lot of records of how Somalia looked 500, 600, 700 years ago. And he went to some of the most important places. So I went to Hamad and Sayla, and so he was able to record how the people there lived, which is really important for us today. So the first place that Ibn Battuta went in Somalia is called Sayla, which is in the north, and he went there from Aden. Aden's in Yemen, and he traveled for 4 days. And when he went to Sayla, he wrote about it. He goes, it was a city of Berbers, basically saying they were dark skinned, most likely our ancestors. And Sayla has always been a very significant place. It's been a trade center. It's been very cosmopolitan with a lot of different ethnicities. And one of the reasons why Sayla is so important in Somali history, not just Somali, so Islamic history, is because it has one of the first masjids ever in Africa, Masjid Qiblatayn. And the reason why I spoke Qiblatayn is because it's got 2 qiblas. Can anyone guess why it would have 2 qiblas for?
Was it because when the Qibla changed from Jerusalem to Mecca?
Yeah, exactly. People originally, when they were praying, would face Jerusalem, but then it got changed. And we pray now towards Mecca. And so that's why Sayla is such a that's one of the reasons why Sayla is such an important part of our history. So anyways, he gets to Sayla, he talks about people because they were Berbers, they were Shafi'i. Somalis till this day are still Shafi'i, although he does say that there were some Shi'as there. Which is not some Shi'as there, which we see today the effects of that Shi'a presence. But there were a large portion of them was just Sunni Shafi'is, which is what Somalis are today. And then he talks about how it had a great market and it was a big bustling cosmopolitan city, and that they would slaughter the number of camels and fish that they would slaughter every day actually meant that the city was quite smelly. So he decided that, you know what, I can't stay there. I'm gonna go to the ship, and he stayed in the ship for a few days rather than stay in the city because the smell of the slaughtering of the animals was a bit too strong for him. So he stays there for a few days, and then he travels down to Hamad. It takes him 15 days on ship to get from Sayla. It goes around the coast and it goes down to Hamad, or Mogadishu, sorry. And he says it would have taken 2 months by caravan. So overland, he says it would have taken 2 months, but by ship, it took him just over 2 weeks. And he talks about how when he got there with his ship, a bunch of small ships would go up to the big ship. And basically what that was that locals would, whenever they would see a big merchant ship come, they would go and they would offer a room for the merchant to stay. They would offer food for the merchant. And the merchants are going to naturally jump at this opportunity. They're tired, it's been a long time of traveling. But really, once they enter into that relationship, now that person who they're staying with is their sales agent. So that person who they're staying with helps them with all the stuff they want to buy and all the stuff they want to sell, meaning they get a nice little profit. So it was so whenever Somali would see these big ships come out, they would literally run to the little ships and try to get to the merchant ship first, so that they could offer their hospitality because they know there's a nice lucrative contract there. So when the Sultan and the people of the city find out that actually Ibn Battuta is a scholar, he's not just a merchant, he's an important scholar, they invite him to stay with students, and they treat him very well. And he talks about the Sultan. He says the Sultan's name was Abu Bakr ibn Sheikh Umar, and that he was Berber. So again, he was dark skinned. He was most likely going to be an ancestor of ours, and that he spoke his native tongue but was also fluent in Arabic. So this also shows that Islam was pretty much heavily established there, and but that the place wasn't belonging to Arab peoples, it belonged to a native population, our ancestors. So Ibn Battuta, one of the interesting things is he talks about the food that they were eating. So I'm going to read you these 2 passages from the diaries. And the first one is that he says, the servant then went to the Sultan and informed him, but soon returned to us with baskets of vegetables and some fofunga. These he divided among us and then presented us with rose water, which is the greatest honor done among them to anyone. So already we get an idea of the kind of that, there's a lot of vegetables here, and that they've got stuff such as rose water, which isn't made in Somalia, so would have most likely been imported. So it shows to you that they were traders, that they were trading quite far. And then in the second extract, he talks about the kind of stuff, the food that they were served. So he goes rice topped with butter, which he most likely, is talking about ghee. And then he says a sauce containing meat, chicken, fish, vegetables, and they also serve unripened banana cooked in milk. This made me laugh. We've been eating most ever since then. And then he goes on sour milk with pickled lemon, bunches of pickled chilies with vinegar and salt, green ginger and mango. So you can see that array of food. Not only does this show the wealth, I mean, we're talking about the 1300s where the diet of the normal person was probably oil and a bit of bread. The diet wasn't very varied. To get these kind of spices, these kind of vegetables would have meant that you had to be very wealthy and that you had to have a lot of good trade connections. Another funny thing that he says that a person in Mogadishu eats as much as a whole group in Arabia. And he goes, they were quite fat, they weighed as much as 3 people, he says. Which is quite funny. Next slide, please. And then he talks, so he stays in Mogadishu for a few days. On his 4th day is a Friday, and as you know, on Jum'ah, we pray on Fridays. So on Jum'ah we pray, and so he talks about that experience. He says that they go, and he says, he says that for Friday the Sultan sent to us some clothes. So look at the generosity. He sent them silk wrappers, upper garments of Egyptian linen with markings, a lined gown of Jerusalem material, and an Egyptian turban with embroideries. So you can see the kind of wealth that the Sultan has, but also as the length that their trade connections go. He's got cloths from Egypt and as far as Jerusalem. And I don't put it here, but actually we've got archaeological evidence that the people at this time were trading as far as China. So they were very active in international trade. So then, so after he gets these clothes as gifts by the Sultan, so he has got something nice to wear for Salatul Jum'ah, they go, they pray, and then they come back from the mosque. And then he describes what it looked like as the procession back from the mosque. He says that a whole procession accompanied the Sultan, that men carried canopies over the Sultan. There were crowds of people around him, there were groups of soldiers, there were musicians that played drums, and pipes and trumpets. So you can imagine it was quite a pompous affair. And then they go back to the Sultan's house, and then he describes, actually he gives us an insight into what the justice system looked like, and the legal system looked like in Hammer in the 1300s. And he talks about how qadis, which are like Islamic jurists, they would use the Sharia to pass judgment, and then he would have a council of ministers who would hear civil cases. And then whenever the Sultan's opinion was required, they would send a letter to the Sultan, and the Sultan would send a letter back with his verdict. So this is 1300s in Allah Musta'an. This is 1300s in Mogadishu. So what's happening in the rest of Somalia? So what's happening in the rest of Somalia? Well, if you go back to Sayla, which you looked at in the first couple of slides, it's a very tumultuous period. From the 1200s up until about the 1500s, there's a lot of conflicts. Does anyone know who Somalis were fighting with at that time? Yeah, the Ethiopians. We were fighting a lot with, oh, it says there, sorry. So we were fighting with Abyssinia, which is modern day Ethiopia. And there was a lot of conflict between the Empire of Ethiopia, which is Christian, and there was a lot of conflict. He was conflicting a lot with the Muslim polities, or the Muslim sultanates and the imamates and the dynasties that lived. And it wasn't just one Muslim dynasty, there were quite a bunch. So they had different relationships with the sultans. They would fight with the sultans, they would fight amongst each other, they would fight within each other, and they would fight with their common enemy, the Abyssinia. Does anyone maybe know why they had such a harsh conflict with Abyssinia?
Because in most of the Abyssinia, everyone was Christian and different religions. So
Fantastic, fantastic. Exactly. That's one of the main reasons why there was such a conflict. It was a religious conflict because Abyssinia was a Christian kingdom and Somalia was a Muslim kingdom. Not Somali, sorry. And these polities that lived in that were based in that region were Muslim polities. And so at the time as well, Abyssinia was very powerful and it used to collect tribute from these Muslim polities. And so a lot of these Muslim polities, they were like, as Muslims, we cannot be overtaken or we cannot be overpowered by a Christian empire like that. And so there was a lot of fights. So there were a bunch. There was the Walashimid dynasty, the Sultan of Ifat, the Adil Sultanate. There were a lot, but I'm really just going to focus on one period of this very tumultuous history that has, to be honest, is still with us today. And I'm going to look at the conflicts with the Adil Sultanate. So the Adil Sultanate was a sultanate that was based around Sayla. Remember we talked about it earlier, one of the first masjids in East Africa, a very important place in Somali history. And what had happened was, our main character here is Ahmed Gurey. So Ahmed Gurey, Ahmed Gurey took over Adil. He took over Sayla. He took over Adil. And he took it over from the previous king. He was very oppressive and he got his position by ill means. So what happened was Ahmed Gurey came, he took it over and he brought together a lot of the kingdoms in that area and he began something called Futuh al-Habash, or the conquest of Ethiopia. And he actually was able to go up to like halfway into Abyssinia, take over half of that territory before Ethiopia had to ask for support from the Portuguese. Who were very, very powerful at that time. And so the Portuguese supplied them with weapons, they supplied them with cannons and muskets, which were, although existed in Somalia, in the Horn of Africa at this time, were very, very rare. And so what happened was, when the Portuguese became a part of this conflict, actually, they had a battle with Ahmed Gurey, and Ahmed Gurey lost, and he actually lost his life. And so what had happened was, he had been winning against the Ethiopians, and so he sent away the Ottomans. So because Ethiopia brought Portuguese people, he said, you know what, I'm going to bring Turkish people. The Ottoman Empire was one of the biggest empires of the world at that time, and so he used their support. And so this became more than just Somali versus Ethiopian, it became Christian versus Muslim. And so what happened was, one of the battles, after he sent away the Turkish soldiers, the Ottoman soldiers away, because he thought he was in a good position, he got assassinated, or he got killed in battle. And his wife basically said that his wife was very distraught, and what she did was she went back to Sayla, and she saw his nephew. She said, I'm going to marry you if you avenge my husband's death. And her husband was like, that sounds like a good deal. His nephew was like, that sounds like a good deal. And so what he did was, he came and he reignited the Christian Muslim wars, and he took over and he killed the king of the Ethiopians. This is the last slide. I'm going to just quickly look at the Achuran Empire. So the Achuran was a polity that existed in southern Somalia, and it started up around the 14th century to the 17th century. As you can see there, it went from Qalafo up there in the northeast and the northwest all the way down to Kismail, and it was a multi-clan polity. So the Adil Sultanate as well, these weren't polities that were based around clans. These had multiple clans. They ruled over large swathes of land, and a lot of people were part of them. And now the administration here was very, very adept. What they did was they would collect tribute from cultivators, from herdsmen, from traders, and they would use these to build a lot of stone walls, a lot of big fortifications, so if you go down to South Somalia, you'll see a bunch of cities like Gandarsha, you'll see a bunch of ruins, stone ruins, you'll see big tomb pillars, and you see a lot of stuff, and these are all remnants of the Ajuran rule, who were a big imam or big sultanate, you can say, or big empire that existed in the south. And they basically were allied with Mogadishu, and at that time Mogadishu was ruled by a Somali Persian dynasty called the Muzaffar. So they were allied with them, and they had fantastic technology, and they had a strong army that was able to fight the Portuguese, who at that time were doing excursions against Markabara, where Sayla and Hamar. Obviously, Ajuran isn't up there, Sayla, which is in the north, but They were able to repel Portuguese cannons against in the south, and they were also able to resist the Oromo migration or the invasion that was coming in from the west. So I'm just going to conclude with these few points. That number one, Somalia has a very fascinating and rich history. We weren't just we took part in a lot of international trade. We had strong armies, we had strong civilization, we had strong polities. And also, I want to actually highlight nomadic people because we tend to ban on nomadic people, but nomadic people are really very important. They transport technologies, they transport philosophies, they trade, and they were really, when we're looking at Ajuran and Adil, they were the bulk of the soldiers that were being used. So without the nomadic people that most of us are from, they would not have existed. And also, the presence of Islam, Somalia, as we've seen from Sayla was one of the first mosques ever in the world, and probably the first in Africa. And you can see that because of the Tuyuqaba. So Somalia has a very, so the Somali people have a very strong tradition of Islam. They have been Muslims for hundreds of years. That's it.
Everyone will take away from this is you go away and do a little bit of research on Aldal, you do a bit of research on Sayla, you do a bit of research on the Ajuran dynasty. Please do so, because that's who you are, that's where you come from. So I'm hoping that everyone will do, there's games. So I'll introduce Holland with the Yeris. That Yeris means dictation, right? What is it? Thank you. Had the spelling, waxaan sameynaynaa spelling activity. Horta waxaan akhrinayaa story. So I'll read out this story in Somali, and then afterwards waxaan ciyaaraynaa Kahoot word game. So you guys will need to use your phones for this. Saada. Beri aroorta. Saada waxay bilaabi doontaa sanad. And usually, while I'm reading out the story, obviously you guys will be writing, but you don't need to do that now. It's just giving you an idea of the type of yeris or spelling activity or task or example. Anyway, so I'll put up the shekala and then I'll explain how you guys will be able to join the Kahoot word game. Berri arorta Saada waxay bilaabi doontaa sanad dugsiyeed cusub iyo fasalka 7aad ee dugsiga dhexe. Waa gabar ama gabar yar oo 11 jir ah, weli qaangaar ahayn, midabkeedu waa maariin, dhererkeedu dhexdhexaad. Waxay gashan tahay shamiis ama shaati cad, goono dheer iyo masar madow, welibana waxay sidataa shandad iyo saacad suun cas leh. Dugsiga waxay aadaa Isniin ilaa Khamiis, oo nasiib darro maalin kasta waddo dheer oo baabuuro iyo isgoysyo badan ayay sii martaa. Qoyskeedu wuxuu degan yahay xaafadda Wadajir ee degmada Xamarweyne. Hooyadeed waa umuliso, aabaheedna waa askari 2 xidigle ah. Xilliga gu'ga roob xoogan ayaa ku da'a markay iridda guriga dhaafto. Marka hadda waxaan intusinayaa siday u qoran tahay sheekadu, dhaqsaan u marinaynaa. 772. Marka hadda already waa ka Talha
ayaan u maleeyaa ama waa taxla deeqa umal and yeah mahad adam waa very marka any nickname or any inshallah meesha waa lagu batay 26 people yeah حيوانكن مقعيس دمير فرو ورابع شبيل أما رئيس You have 30 seconds, so you have some time. Think about it. حيوانكن مقعيس
You guys are good.
Okay, mashallah, 24. Well done. That bana كجار ممكن وحويان دمير فرو. 24 out of the 27 people or 31 people vamos, okay? Hiya next. مركز شيخ مقعيسة حيوان كان حويان مص بس دوعات بس نايل بس سجارة شيخ مقعيسة Okay, so 25 people got it right. Well done. I think some other people are not able to answer because I'm sure there was 31 of us. But let's continue. Next. MashaAllah, Mahad Baku has the best.
Who's mad? Who's mad?
Well done. Let's not get distracted. Su'ad, let's not get distracted. Sheikh مقعيسة حيوان كان منايميا مسوا دانيير مسوا رابع مسوا بعيد. You've got 10 more seconds. حيوان كان مقعيس. I think yes. Again, mashallah, 24 people. Well done. Mawlana Hayan Daniel, obviously. Okay, هذا مركز شيخ مقعيسة حيوان كان موحويان لباح مثل هرمعت مثل شبال مثل يي 10 more seconds or 12 more seconds. عيسى تليفونكم بجوا مركا كان dadku way ku adkaatay only 16 people got it. Hey, let's continue. We'll show who's on top at the end. And Sheikh مقعيسة حيوان كان مصعمية مثل يحاس مثل مرودي مثل ويلي ويل يس ما هاد شوافي ما قلنا لها immersion. You've got 9 more seconds. Mashallah, 27 people. Well done, well done. Well done. Hey, next. تبان قلتوا سنينا قفكم ماشى ugu haysta. So subax wanaagsan macnaheedu waa maxay? Is it good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night? Subax wanaagsan. Waad isku tiraahdeen. I hope inaad garanaysid macnihiisa. Hadda waa the easy questions, so don't get excited. and sidee tahay marka sidee tahay macnaheedu waa maxay? Is it fine? How are you? Nice to meet you. Mise hi. Sidee tahay. Okay, mashallah, 28 people. Qofka qadimiya ma garanayo number 1 cast what it means. It's okay. Sheeg magaciisa marka I think xayawaan kale weeyaan. Miya ma yeyba mise waa waraabo ama waraabe waco ama ay. حيوان oo lagu yaqaano wadanka casaanka orange-ka ama green. 17 people, that is really good. waxaan u malayaa way isticmaalaan wax badan dadku. 21, so the 21 question maxaa la yiraahdaa? Which one is correct? Aabbo waa askari, sidee baa loo qoraa? Aabbo waa askari, aabbo waa askari, ama aabbo waa askari, ama abo waa askari. Okay, yes, can I knew inuu noqonayo difficult. Only 6 people baa gartay. Only 6 people baa gartay. This is the last question. Aabbo qoraalkiisu waxa weeyaan 2A, 2B and O. Aabbo. Ba'da waxa weeyaan 2B. waa askari. Haddaad rabtiin dood. If you don't agree, the dictionary is right here. And so only 6 people baa gartay. This is the last question. Get ready. Baa soo baxay out of nowhere. We're gonna find out. We'll find out. Let's see. Keebaa ugu dambeeyay? Hadda waxaa ugu dambeeyay su-aashan. Nasiib darro sidee baa loo qoraa? Nasiib darro ama unfortunately sidee baa loo qoraa? You've got 3 seconds. Only 8 people. Only 8 people. Nasiib darro aad bay isku dhow yihiin. Well done. So hadda waxaanu arki doonaa yaa ugu haysta. عيارتهم عيارين for the last 10-15 minutes. No, actually less than that. يا كوب كقاضي. That's right. Back to podium, yes. Well, B. B is number 3. Well done. Mahad is number 2. It has to be Hudhud. Come on. Well done, Somali pirate. You're a Somali pirate. Hadda waxaa nagu xiga one need to use your phone. I'm so sorry. Mashallah. Well done guys for such fantastic performance and well done. We're not just pirates. We're good. The other thing I was going to say before we move on to the next item is the open mic is still open, so people
please do register with Ayan.
Ayan, open mic. So if anybody wants to
Bismillah. Waqtiga waan dareysanahay inuu waqtigu aad u ordayo. Markaan is yar dhegaysano waan dedejinayaa, waan soo koobayaa. Qaybtan waa ciyaaro kale amba game kale. Horta waxaan jeclahay inaan qaybta halkan aan joogo Englishkii baa in badan lagu hadlay. Imika maadaama aan Somali aan xusayno waxaan jeclaanayaa inaan Somali ka wada dhigo. Dad unfortunately dad way ku adkaanaysaa. Fortunately-na waxa weeyaan dadna ay saa way jeclaanayaan markaan maqlayo Soomaaliya lagu hadlo. Markaa Soomaali baan ku hadlaynaa si fiican u dhegeysta. Waa ciyaar amba game. Waxaan tusayaa say wallahi generation was garanayaan say wallahi generation. Hooyo op ayay taalaa inaan yadda weynaan doonaynaa hooyo op bay taalaa. Marka waxaan ku bilaabaynaa sorry, yeah, okay, waxaan ku bilaabaynaa su'aalaha kolley hooyo kasta way soo ciyaarsiisa ciyaartan. Waxaad sheegtiin number 1 hal hadan dadka xagga dambe inay arki waayaan baa dhici karta. Ma la wada arkayaa? Ka qaabilin kaamirada ma arkay. Markaas su-aasha ugu horeysa inagoo anoo degdegaya ayaa gartay gacantoona la taago qofkii garanaya. Aye?
Suul.
Suul. Aye, number 2. Aye, maha fariiro maha. Waa kawad garatay Burduso. Number 3. Farahayna magacaga. Fardaxaad. Waa ka fardexo, okay. Aye, number 4. Number 4. Inan magaceedu yahay Faadumo aan maqlay. Last one, tabu dambaysa. Waa fariiro taaba ugu caansan fariiro. Okay, maxaa la yiraahdaa? The middle. Saxda maxaa la yiraahdaa? Gacanta dhexdeeda. Goal waad garatay. Baabaco amba calaacal labadaba baabaco amba calaacal waa good. Aye, maxaa la yiraahdaa xagga saacada lagu xidho? Gumaacun. Gumaacun amba waxaa la yiraahdaa xaaba gurana waan maqlayaa way jirtaa. Waxaa la yiraahdaa waa curcur. Okay. halkan waxa weeyaan waa positionkii waan yidhi op iyo see loo kala sheegaa. Halkan box baan ku haysanaa. Waxaad sheegtiin ereyga imanaya waa la maqlaya xagga dambe. Ereyga iman doona halkaas garta maxaa la yiraahdaa? Boxka on the box maxaa la odhanayaa? waxaan doonayaa on una Somali English on insan waxaa la yiraahdaa dul. waa kala garateen waa dul may kaa kala weyn kaa maxaa above maxaa la yiraahdaa? above haween kor. Marka difference buu Soomaali u sameeyaa waxa uu kor yaalaa waxa aad u sareeyay waxa la yiraahdaa waa kor weyn. Okay, boxkaas halka waa eega. Okay, maxaa la yiraahdaa in maxaa la yiraahdaa Soomaali dhex waad garteen. maxaa la yiraahdaa hoos sorry maxaa la yiraahdaa imika tan ma sheegayo in front of waad garteen hor. Okay. maxaa la yiraahdaa beside maxaa la yiraahdaa ag amba dhinac amba barbar. barbar waa saddex buu Soomaaligu leeyahay ag dhinac iyo barbar. waa ag dhinac iyo barbar. Okay, maxaa la yiraahdaa behind gadaal amba dabar amba dabo. Okay, halkan practice yar baan sameynaynaa inagoo arkaya bisadda la socda. number 1 bisadda xaggee joogtaa? kurasta dhexdooda. kaas dhex. halkan halkii joogtaa? dul. kursiga dul hurdaa. haye halkan maxay joogtaa? sariirta hoos joogtaa. ma hoos taalle way hoos joogtaa. ay komadiinada way dhex joogtaa. and miiska way hor way ag joogtaa barkada way hor joogtaa fadhiga way gadaal joogtaa way daba joogtaa okay komadiina kabeed waa meelaha kabaha la dhigto komadiina amba meelaha sariirta la garab dhigo waa dadkii nagu horeeyey amba generationada facay nagu horeeyey ereyadu saa kuma yimaadaan ereyga system lagu halaa jira marka ereyada sida loo dhaca erey bixinta ama vocabulary-gu say ku yimaadaan iminka Soomaalidu markay heleen maxay ahayd markii la beeray kulley xilli kasta marun buu yimid taariikhda markii la beeray wax kasta ay helaan Soomaalidu erey bay u doondooni jireen ama magac bay u doondooni jireen innagu waxaa la moodaa inaan iminka ka seexanay waxaan iska qaadanaa ereyada maxay ahayd ajaanibka maxay ahayd ereyada kale marka waxaan tusayaa bal sidii qaamuuska ereyadu ay ku galeen innaga oo ciyaar ka dhiganayna iminka waxaan arkaysaa maxaa la yidhahdaa haddaan ni weydiiyo ayaa garanaya su-aashaasi ayaa garanaya carrot waa afkii Yurub laga hadlayo waxaan doonayaa Soomaali okay dabacase intaas way garatay dabacase sidee ku yimid dabacase waxaad arkaysiin saacad eegaynaa maxaa la yidhahdaa waa dabadii faraska dabo way cas tahayna maxaa la yidhahdaa casaanka waxaa la yidhahdaa labaranji waa reed waa taqaaniin dabadii cas baa la isu geeyey waxaa loo bixi markaa maadaama isagu dabacas yahay yaa la yidhi magaciisiiba dabacase si u samaysmayo okay kaabaan doonayaa qofka garanaya ay aamuso
asaan guduud ma dhihi karaa
guduud ma dhihi karaa bas dabacas guduud af Soomaaliga waa qani vocabulary badan buu leeyahay bixin badan buu leeyahay okay waxaan u baahan amiga qofkii garanaya ay aamuso bal yar ka fikira maxaa soo hela ka maxaa la oran karaa ayaa garanaya ilaa Soomaalida marun buu yimid isagoo iyagoo wax kala garanaya iyo waxan baa yimid oo ku shaqeeya laga yiri marka erey u doonto sidee Soomaalidu u heleen ereygaas waalidadu ay aamusan haye qofka qarta taagay maxaa la yiraahdaa gaari gacan okay sidoo uu ku yimid wakaas waa gaari way garanayeen kana waa gaari bay raadeen maadaama uu shaaqi leeyahay ma motor baa wada imay gacan baa wadaysa gacantii baa gacan iyo gaari marka isu geeyo gaari gacan u dhow marka waxa loo baahan yahay inaan nagu imagination kaas yeelano oo ereyada yimaada aan u fikirno haddaad u fikirto mobile phone TV radio waxyaalahaas haddii loo fikiro waa la heli lahaa marka dadkii hore way fikiri jireen innaga waxaan moodnaa inaan fikirkii joojinay markaas ininka flowerkaas Soomaalidu ay beertaan bal ka fikira maxaa lagu yiraahdaa in English sunflower maxay ka dhigan tahay sunflower qorraxda iyo kolba meeshay joogto buu daba socdaa qorraxdan buu eriyaashay haddii halkaa joogto aroortu la soo bilaabaa ilaa habeenku la dhameeyaa marka waxaa la yiraahdaa Soomaalidu maxay u bixiyeen sunflowerka si ka fiican bay waliba Soomaalidu markaa helaan ayaa garanaya markaa waalidada ay dambeeyaan waalidada ay dambeeyaan معلمين طيب ده يعني معلم اوكي ايه ما معناه كتا قرح ضيق واسك في عطاي مسات قرح ده سينونيمز مميلا سينونيمز كلام اري كرو لندق مميلا قرح على الرضا قبل كي بعد على كده قرح دي بعد علي بركع قرح ضيق قبل ضيق جود جيست سيفي عم بدون شيء وكاس عيرادين قبل كي يصير دعيا يا ايغيا وكا وقفكي وضيا قبل ضيا اوكي waxay yimiday badii bay Soomaalidu baratay awal bad waxay yaqaaneen bariga yaqaaneen badii baa laga ka wala kaluumaystay maxaa ayaa garanaya shark Soomaali maxaa la yiraahdaa libax badan adigu aad macallimiinta ku beeraysaa dadka wadiga good baatay waa fiican tahay adigu okay waxay arkeen Soomaalidu libaaxii bariga yaqaaneen badii baa timiday libaaxii badda waxay raadeen kana badu atoore ka yahay oo laga wada cabso dadka ku cunaa kii bariga ku cunay libaax badeed buu bixiyeen wakaas waa badii libaaxii iyo libaax badeed kaas kaaba ku soo xidhaya okay maxaa halkaa ka arkaysiin وقاصر روكي قاصر روبات اوكي امك فوكابولري يردك دقائق يا كسو خدايا 3 مدن وقتي اوكي ايا غرمي خلي كستا waxaan shaqada waa profession iyo jobs iyad waxay helaysiin marka gacanta taagaysiin maxaa laga radaa firefighter Somali dab damis ودبدميس وحويان وشقدا قف كسمة يعني بحمله
دبدبية
دبدمية وكا وين تكون قرتي دبدمية أوكي إنك واحد دور يا كاوا ولا تكتيم برجينيا بربر تيمو جري أوكي تيمو جري أوكي next حويان ambassador أيها هلا يا ambassador اوكي انك معلم بو نقدي يا قبطه دنجيري انا تاي دنجيري جود مغعاول لا يا سرك عمل مغعاول لا سي جسن يا سرك مغعاول شيء قادر فانتاستيك بات هاي اوكي
ما شاء الله أكبر
ما شاء الله اوكي هاي محل الرضا ان صومالي يعني وضع معها يا درول اوكي درول والدرايفر والوكا درول واسك درايفر وكا ووضع يا كيف يعني درايفر هي درول ووضع اوكي هاي محل الناس ديارات بو كان كحيا محل الناس ديارات كحيا لودنيا ما ديارات كحيا لودنيا ديارات دو بدوشا ودولينيا ديارات دي ودولينيا كان لو محل حبو وحبر يا معلم وان ديدي وان ديدي معلم بري مركا معلم ومعلم مركا اوكي وحبد يقدم بيسي حاله انا كان نك حساب ضد حسابي حاجه انت مكانك يعني حسابي حاجه انت مكانك حاله وحسابيه اكاونتنت وحسابيه اوكي اوف بزنس مان من وجرا اي صومالي محل غير هذا اوف بزنس مان عصدي هاي تعال وضع قبل يا رجال تي في قاعد ولا داوتين جورناليست وريه كاس
مقعيس بس لكن مدارس هم
مقع مودي مقع هاي مناجر محل هذا ماريه اوكي هاي قف تعال يدك هاي سبوك اسمه افهيين محل هذا تعال وضع مسا جاج محل هذا in Somali حاكم واف عربي حاكم واف عربي اوكي وارقت مقعاود رضا رحمه ما شاء الله رحمه ادلو في عندك وكا وقرصور قرطه يوددك او كلا سوريا قرتي كي laga helay iyo kii helay marka waxaan u jeeday inta halka ku soo xiraya anigu aad bad maadsantiin waxa weeyaan afku maaha wax saaw ku iman doona in aan dadaalo oo u fikirno oo intaan waxyaalo badan oo kale oo fikirnaa marna afkeenu way saan u caawino ereyada bal erey bixin jadiida saan u leeyahay way ku caawin karaysaa inaad u fikirto erey baad arkaysaa si loo helay marka adiguna waxaad samayn doontaa inaad erey kale loo curiyo dadkii hore uriyay mid bay hayeen nagama waaweyneen nagama aqli badnayn inaguna waan samayn karaynaa waad mahadsantiin wasalaamu calaykum
Right
online
where are they available?
On the leaflet.
On the leaflet, there's
a door and
a QR code where you can get all of these games and some more. If anyone, for any reason, is interested in learning more, we, the team here, led by Ustad Mumin, Ustad Rumi, all of us here, Hadan, Ibrahim, we're here. If anyone wants to do more, wants to come to the center for more hours, come to another center. Gamson Center 2 hours. We're here for you guys, so there really should be no excuse for learning by your mother tongue, and it is quite fun as well. You can't just say, "Well, it's boring." No, it was quite fun. That I thought it was fun. On to the next person again, the person of the day, I think, Ibrahim, and the translation of that poem.
So what I'm going to do for you guys is there's a fantastic poem called Afkohoyo by a poet called Abdullah Botan, and I've worked on a translation of it. I've worked on a bit of a translation on it, and I'm going to just explain the poem to you guys, yeah? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me? I'm not going to start like a reply. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Thank you. So the Abdullah, he starts by saying, he says, Inti adi dibadio ilmaha mudaxal maleh. Idna ersan mayno inaga asbaab kale. oo asal sidaan ahayn iyo oday ka warintii oo raahdoo af laga dhaho oo ay eryo suugaan inta badan ilaasheen haddaynaan inagu baran ubadkana aan loo dhigin sida aadamaha kale afkii hooyo lagu qorin anqaas looxyo ku engegan ku urursan buugaag oo hayso amuurtaas eedeeda maanihin. So if you go to that verses, inti ade dividio ilmahan madaxal maray goes the ones who have gone to the diaspora and our children have no inheritance. He's talking about the mother tongue. He's talking about culture. He says, inna ersumayne annaga asbabta leh. We can't put the blame on anyone but ourselves. We're not going to blame anyone because the fault lies with us. Or asal sidaan ahayniyo oday ka warintii oo raahdo af laga dhaho oo ay eryo suugaan inta badan ilaasheen hadaynan inagu baran ubadkana aan loo dhigin. So what he's saying is our origins, how we were, and the stories that we get from our elders, and wisdoms and words of wisdom that were long preserved in poetry. If we don't learn it and we don't teach our kids, sida aadamaha kale afkii hooyo lagu qorin, like the other people in the world, they write all their history, right? They write all their language. They've got dictionaries, they've got encyclopedias, they've got history books. They write all of their stuff down in books. If we don't do like they do, and that's like forever preserving ink and collect it in books. Oh, hey, so the money. Does that thought of that issue not lie with me? So he's basically talking about how if the culture becomes lost, the blame is on us because we are not preserving it. آخرية أدونكوبا أباه وقرقارو إليس نورهسية آبياشا جوغيو أمه يدينيو أخياري وحقردوين إنت آني أتشالانو إلي حبال قرين حتى لغو أكبرانو عن أقوانتا لغاقورين وهيسو أمورتاس إيدي دماغين آخرية أدونكوبا أباه وقرقارو إليس نورهسية. So the ones that passed away, and he kind of talks about the exact people he's talking about later on a bit further down. May Allah support them and give them light. So our fathers are still here, and our mothers, and the intellectuals, and the good people. Before they pass away, are put in the grave. If we do not stay by their side, and if we do not like collect as much knowledge from them as possible, and aqoonta laga burin oo hayso amuurtaas eedeeda maale. Does the thought of that issue not lie with me? Again, he's talking about right here. What he's basically saying is that these are the steps that you guys need to do to preserve your language and culture. And if you don't do it, then the fault lies with you. The fault lies with us. This is ninka kiisa aase afkii hooyadiide abnaqiisa tuuraa isaga ismooda ma ahaado qolo kale. sidii arangeel dhalay irmaa caana laga rabo hal isbuuro mahoro oo adduunku la xiriirkiyo aqoon lagu siyaasado waa arrimo banaanoo afqalaad ma diidani balse ilbaxnimo ku doonkaad adoo waayinkaagii aadariyo luuq kale ku amaahanaysa ayahoodu waa halis. So he says ninka kiisa aase afkii hooyadiida, the one who rejects his mother tongue and buries it, the one who, and he denies his ancestry. He might think himself to be from another people, but he will never be from another people. No matter how much English words you use, you're always going to be Somali. So he's using a bit of a metaphor here. When the she camel gives birth, she starts releasing milk. She starts giving milk. And if her babies, the ones that she's just giving birth to, if they suckle all that milk, then the nomad who's with that camel isn't going to have any milk to drink. So you kind of separate the she camel from a bit, or you tie the udder so she can't drink from the camel, so you've got some milk left. So he's saying the way you might separate a she camel from the mother, I'm not saying let's separate ourselves from the rest of the world. I'm not saying don't learn any other language, don't learn about any other culture. oo adduunku xiriirkiyo aqoon lagu siyaadsado waa arrin banaan. So by saying rather to connect with other people in the world and to gain knowledge via that, it's perfectly fine. waa arrin banaan, waa xalaal weeye. balse ilbaxnimo kusugnaanshu waa exactly what the issues balse ilbaxnimo kudoonkaad adoo waalinkaagii aad eryo luuq kale ku amaahaneysaan aayahooda waa halis. However, to use foreign words when you've got your own language, to use it in a way so to seem sophisticated, to seem like you're better, is dangerous for our language, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. So this is the last verse. He goes, "Asa so ucheebkaygi maansadu ma abbaaray goobtii ma iftiishay cudurkii mase iri aqoontay ina diin ha lagu dhayo ereysa iga dardaaran ah baan ku soo afmeeriya ummaddii waxay jiraysaa inta ay afkeediyo astaan gaar ah leedahay aadmiga kaloo idinku aqoonsadaane arrintaa ha loo kaco." So he finishes off by saying, he says, "Asa so ucheebkaygi maansadu." So let me finish off the topic, right? Ma abbaaray goobtii, basically that I hit the nail on the head, basically. Ma iftiishay cudurkii, did I highlight the issue, the sickness, the problem? Ma say iri aqoontay ina diin ha lagu dhayo. Did I say what? Did I provide some solutions of stuff? And whatever I couldn't, then ina diin ha lagu dhayo. That stuff is for the religion to help, or to the solution is in the faith. Ina diin ha lagu dhayo, and then he says, I'm gonna finish up with some final words, some final advice, some important final words of advice. Nations exist as long as long as they have their unique language and symbol. That other humans recognize them by, which basically means he's basically calling the people to arms. He goes, let's fight for that, basically.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khair. I mean, such a thought-provoking poem, written all in Somali, alhamdulillah, but also you guys heard the translation in English. What I have seen lately, I don't know if you guys have the same, if you're in the same situation, is that there's an awful lot of Somali youth writing poetry in English. Now, okay, the poem said, yes, let's learn our own language, but I feel like poetry runs in the Somali people's veins. We're still called, I think we still are the nation of poets. That's what you go down in history, we go down as the nation of poets. So whether you write it in Somali, best, or whether you write it in English, you know, I still think that writing poems is runs in our veins, like I said. So without further ado, the open mic, meaning one request is that could you guys not film? I don't know this.
Yes, so this one, basically back in the day, in the 70s, there was a chain of poems, right? So a chain of poems, like a debate. People were debating using poetry, and there was a very famous one called Relive. And they were basically talking about a lot of topics, about like nationalism, stuff like that. So when I was translating this poem for a journal, I wanted to do a reply to it. So I tried, and yeah, this is my attempt, yeah? So Bismillah. Raggii siinka tirin jiray, heesaha sargoyn jiray, raggii saafi jiray eray, ee saxara faaliyo suugaan, saadaal doorasliyo afmal dahan sarbeeb iyo suugaan ku mari jiray, safkoodaan ku biiray. Sanadkeena maanta ah, waxaa jira sakala iyo suuyo laysu qooleeye balansaafku maansada. Seven waliba xaalkii, subax waliba waagii, saami waliba qaybtii, ogoobay silsiladuhu, sadku waa ku kala gaar, wayna kala sarreeyaan. Suugaantu waa deris, software aan gurin, cilmi laga sad qaato, lagu soohay taariikh, sunsun way wada taxan. Wixii sula ku dhaafaa saakuun yimaado, dabkii shalay ku saaqaa maantana ku sugayee, waayaha balsuuree. Dadka saaran dunida, isku soo casooyaa, isku sayramida baa, waa kii video is coming right now. isku sayro midabba hamigood saluugee saqiir weeye damacood seef weeye sanamkood kibir weeye sawdkood naxariisna waa usuus kala saarku waa sixir system weeye eed badan guluf weeye saymo leh nina soobir kaga noqoy nina saa'id kaba dheef saa dambe maxay noqon ninkii yiri su-aashaas anoon kuu sargooynayn aan saafa hadalkee sabadeenu waa oon soorteenu waa been safarkeenu dhalantee riyo soo jireen iyo giddi waa maqaarsaar saxarliyo warkeeduna way sibir dhaqaaqdoo soorkii afaysnaa garbaduu silsiladiyo seeta adag in lagu laray mala socota sheekada riyadeena seeftii lagu sugi lahaa baa sidigtani lagu qalay xeeraduna sidii bay uga sooman tahay geer mala socota sheekada warankiina sooyaan samaydiisu waa dhuxul mid la siman la waayo mala socota sheekada sama wada cismaanow nin sunnaha ku dhaatiyo waxaan ahay qof salafi ah oo saluugsan waayaha safarkaygu waa meel sababtiisu waa xeel saldhigiisu waa nabad soomaaloo isjecloo tawxiidku soo iyo u yahay sadiyo quud oon saatir mooye u sujuudin cid kale saf kaliya ku wada jira oo wada sokeeyo ah sahankeedii baan ahay
So, guys, what I want you to do is, when I say you say hey, okay? Hey. Hey. Inta wa kafi anti kawan Hey. There we go. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ayan Aiden. I'm a spoken word artist, writer, and I just do poetry basically. And today when I was told to do a piece, I thought the piece that I'm going to do for you guys is, what does it mean to be Somali, okay? Now, fun fact, when it comes to poetry, we have a little thing that we do. We click our fingers. Can you guys click your fingers? Let me just hear you guys click your fingers. There we go. When you feel something that I say, or I say something and you're like, ooh, just click your fingers and that's how you get into the poetry vibe, okay? So yeah, without further ado, bismillah. What does it mean to be Somali? See, I can tell you how proud I am, or how I thank God every day for the qasr, for the banter, for dadkayga inu Ilaahay iga dhigay Somali. Or I can tell you about that bariis hilib bamoos, that 3-course meal. But I would rather tell you about the pride that I feel when I see ocean stars, or the pride that I feel when I hear Somali, Thank you. What does it mean to be Somali? See, if you ask me what I think it feels to be a Somali growing up in the West, then I think I would have been able to answer that question best, because I don't think I'm the same Somali as Mariam in Galmudug or Hawiya in Togder, and I don't understand the struggles of Zakaria in Saleh. But I do understand Abdi from Minnesota, and I understand Ayan from Melbourne, because ever since the day that I was born, I had to deal with the concept of not fitting in, not deemed British enough due to the pigments of my melanin, nor Somali enough for the Somalis back home because luqadda ma garanaynin. Balancing two identities, as my mother would say, la hoy, dhaqankaaga ha ka tagin. What does it mean to be Somali? Sometimes I think it means absorbing the generational trauma of our parents as they silently scream for hope and a longing for home. Saying Somali mothers deserve the world and everything in it. I am too well known. We're too familiar with the strength of a Somali mother. I mean, leave my child alone. Leave my child alone. A Somali mother makes a house a home. But sometimes we forget that behind our Somali mothers is a broken home, a broken Somalia. What does it mean to be Somali? They all said you guys, I think I've never said it. See, for me, sometimes it means carrying around a heavy heart, a broken heart, for falling in love in a country that I'm still yet to see. The motherland that you and I fell in love with through our parents' tales and share coins and the TV screens. I pray to one day meet in wholeness my nation, and my blue flag that mirrors the blueness of the skies and seas. day bask in the richness of my country, bathe in the richness of my ancestry, from Sayyid to Sultanate dynasty. And even though that my tongue still bears colonialism, sometimes stuttering and struggling to understand my forefathers' poetry, being Somali to me is forcing myself through it so that I can teach our kids my legacy. What does it mean to be Somali? But above all, I end it with two meanings. Two meanings I strongly believe. Being Somali to me is a simple concept of Somali nimo. The helping hand, something that no other people can understand. The salams that we give to each other as we walk by, like Habib said, the events that we create like this to help each other with advice. But lastly, being Somali to me is the understanding that empires fall and rise, and God bears witness when I say, now is truly our time. What does it mean to be Somali? Thank you very much, guys.
And we are poets because we are from the nation of poets. The discussion, Saad.
And so forth, right? So this presentation is called Hoya Matalo. أنا بقول شر بالك وعي Hoya Matalo بين كل شيء معايو. لكن كفتن كرون بكتب بفهمتي. I'll show you in the next video. If you can play this, رون تاشاقي ولا كده. Guys, listen up to the video.
وعاشا وعاشا هوي متالو مقارنيو مقارنيو Matalo. I don't understand Somali. Matalo. Mokusheki. Magaranayo.
Good. So the reason why I put that video up is because I think, let's be honest, there's a lot of young people here in the room. Now I was that person, especially
when the stakes are high at work, your tone matters.
Technical difficulty. Anyway, so I was that person before. Why I didn't understand Somali properly. But I think a lot of the times what throws us off from learning Somali is when we hear Hoya Matala or we say fish and chips or say Wallahi, okay, Shona, we're like, okay, if I am Hoya Matala, I might as well stay Hoya Matala, you know? But I don't think there's a aib in it. I think that's when, once the acknowledgement comes, is when you should decide to say, you know what, I can do better with my language, you know? Learning Somali, immersing myself in Somali and so on and so forth. So yeah, that was the video I decided to show you guys. Identity. So the definition of identity that I've seen on Google was a person's sense of self established by their unique characteristics, affiliations, and social roles. And that really comes down to how do you see yourself? Who do you see? What do you relate with? Who do you identify with? When you're walking down the street, your friendship groups, the way that you joke, the foods that you eat, what you watch, even these all come down to part of identity. And the concept of identity overall provides somebody with a sense of continuity. Marka, if you identify as Somali, then surely you'd wake up speaking Somali. You'd wake up listening to Somali programs. You'd wake up doing different Somali things. But sadly and inevitably, that's not what we see today. Okay, so Anaga, all of us that are over here, Dulkan Umandala. Dulkan Iman. during the 91 we had to in Asokahna where and they came to where they could find refuge, and Britain is the case for us, right? So what does that mean for like me or other people that are second generation? It means that we have to balance two things. We have to balance being British or speaking English or dhaqanka British ka inaan fahano banaanka haddana guriga markaan joogno to understand dhaqanka Somali. And I think during that point when you don't balance the two, what happens? I think you either lose one erodes, and you begin to like lean more towards one side. And I think there's no shame in identifying as British, because once again that is a culture you're familiar with. But also when it comes to Somali, when you feel a gap in essence when it comes to that identity. So what happens when we are unable to balance both? A growing divide appears. If you look at this photo, Google and really,